Hey everybody, welcome to the FN Studios. I am John Ramtine alongside Robin Black. The UFC will hold 3 shows this week. Saturday night, it ends off with UFC 200. Of course, the main event, the light heavyweight championship of the world on the line. Daniel Cormier and Jon Jones in a rematch, but also the heavyweights will be profiled. Brock Lesnar taking on Mark Hunt, the former heavyweight champion, Cain Velasquez, and Travis Browne. Might as well talk about what's going on in the heavyweight world. As a former champion, we talked about Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt. A common opponent, Frank Mir, apparently looking to bail on the Ultimate Fighting Championship, saying that he doesn't want to fight this drug test. It's going to cost him way too much money. He has too many things going on in his life. He's got kids in private school, as well as other endeavors. He needs to make money. He's asked the UFC to let him go. I would imagine you and I were having this conversation. He wants to be released to go to Bellator, most likely.
Maybe, or Fedor's over there in Russia. Someone will throw $400,000 at you to fight Fedor, and he's not all that big. Frank's a nice big guy. This is one of those things, people are always, I don't know if you know this, but the internet, there's a lot of hate.
Really?
Yes, it's true.
Good to know.
And people will often look to hate on the things that they watch or the things that they love, or it's fun to get excited about things, and hate's a good, easy way to do it. People often hate on the UFC. Did you know that?
I did know that.
Yeah, they do.
Yes.
They do that. And but they rarely will take the moment and look and see the human element that's in there. If Frank Mir gets released, and I think there's a very good chance he might, it won't be because they're looking and going, oh, that'll cause no competition. Oh, it'll be no problem if our competitors use a former 2-time UFC heavyweight champion. No sweat. They know it will cost them. If they release Frank Mir, it's because they'll call him in the office. I don't know Frank's wife's name. Let's say it's Shirley. Frank, we know you and Shirley are you're still looking to make money. You've got kids in private school. Hey, man, you've been with us for going on 20 years. You've been a champion. You fought the biggest fights. You fought Lesnar. If you and Shirley need to head out there and you want to make some more money, let's let you go.
So basically, it's a Chris Lieben, Wanderlei Silva scenario. Frank Mir started his UFC career back in 2001 when Zuffa purchased the company, and I think he has 26 fights under the Zuffa banner. So it makes sense if that is what the UFC decided to do because of that.
For sure, and you make 2 perfect examples. There's lots of reasons to get mad at the Death Star or Apple Computers or the UFC or whatever the big corporation is. Lots of reasons as a fan, always. But sometimes those little human stories fall underneath it. Chris Lieben could have kept him. That guy's valuable to your competitors. Wanderlei Silva, they went to keep him and thought, you know what, Wanderlei has done a lot. And if Frank Mir goes, it'll be for human reasons, for emotional, friendship type reasons, despite the fact it's kind of harmful to your company to let your competitors have your guys. And we rarely talk about those things when we're talking about the Death Star.
Yeah, I mean, Frank Mir, if he decided to go to Bellator, would be a huge addition. There are a lot of fights in the organization. It's one of the divisions that they desperately need stars. So you could see where Frank Mir would be a perfect addition to that company. At the same time, the UFC could say, you're not going anywhere. We do not want you to help our competitor, but based on the relationship they have.
That's what we're thinking. And they do have the legal and contractual right to do it. But if you're Frank, you're like, so really, you want me to fight Junior Dos Santos or Cain Velasquez for $200,000, or I can go fight Cheick Kongo again, or Matt Mitrione, maybe for even more money. Yeah, that sounds better for me and Shirley. Frank and Mrs. Mir, I'm sorry.
However,
I didn't know your name.
Is that a misconception? Because everybody thinks that, yes, everybody knows that the UFC is the #1 organization with most of the best fighters in the world. We know that Bellator, being the #2 organization, very attractive, willing to spend a lot of money, Viacom money. However, did they make the mistake of going to Bellator thinking that we're going to an organization, we're just going to manhandle these guys? Did Ben Henderson think when he signed that contract, and I think the number is $300,000 a fight, that he was going to go in there and manhandle Andrey Koreshkov? Because if you've never seen that fight, Andrey Koreshkov did to Ben Henderson what no fighter in the UFC has ever done.
It's true. And that, of course, shows you how amazing Koreshkov is. And he is a spectacular fighter. If Rory ends up going that way, that's the fight you got to see. But it also makes, again, the UFC, you're never right 100% of the time or wrong 100% of the time. You can't see the future. But if you're saying, we can't keep everybody, we're going to let Ben Henderson go, we think he's on the downslide, they look good for that one. On the other hand, you've got Josh Koscheck and
Josh Thompson.
Josh Thompson. the Joshes. And both of those guys, and this is no knock against these guys, into their 30s, fought all the great fights, had brilliant performances, put themselves out there as far and put themselves at risk and did brilliant things. They didn't go to Bellator to fight Michael Chandler or to fight Paul Daly. Both of those guys got injured. There were injuries that 5 years, I don't know for sure, but they may have been injuries that 5 years ago they'd be like, let's go fight these fights. Now they're like, we didn't come here to fight these guys. We came here to get paid very well to fight lower, use our name and fight less risky guys. They're not going over there for that. And if Frank, conjecture, if he and Shirley head over there, it's for the same reason.
We're talking about the heavyweights. Frank Mir looking to get out of his UFC contract. And as I mentioned off the top, the heavyweight limit, the focus, in addition to the light heavyweight match. Actually, it's championship tilts. There's all weight classes, but we know that everybody loves the heavyweights, especially when you have Brock Lesnar on this card. He brings all these different eyeballs. The kickboxing fans, they're tuning in because Mark Hunt is their guy. Cain Velasquez, arguably one of the best heavyweights, if not the best heavyweight of the last 5 to 10 years. Travis Browne kind of flying under the radar, even though we know what he's capable of. We've seen him take out former champions. He's massive. He has a creative background, worked with Greg Jackson, now working with his teammate and his friend, Ronda Rousey's coach, his girlfriend, whatever it is. So, do you expect Travis Browne to do anything to Cain Velasquez? Cain sharpening his skills with DC, who's in the biggest fight of his career.
I think we all looked at Travis Browne when he was coming up, and we're like, wow, geez, this guy is legit.
Because he was moving like Dominic Cruz.
Exactly. His footwork was great. He was super slick, very mobile for a big guy, and then he had a couple of those brilliant knockouts just by positioning himself to create enough force to be able to do it. I think the camp change is the one that changed people's opinion. When you go from a proven camp, a Greg Jackson camp, where the best of the best have been fighting for decades, you know, certainly the last decade, and then you go to a camp that people are pointing the finger at as more of a pad holder, an unproven guy, a guy who came from boxing and kickboxing, and he has some solid mixed martial arts fighters, but, you know, Ronda Rousey, being the best woman fighter in the world at the time, was also the longest athlete. She had been a high-level competitive combat athlete for so long. I think I could have held pads for her and she would have been okay. You know, that's the feeling, whether that's true or not, whether that's deserved or not. Also, Edmund Tarverdyan, for whatever reason, we were talking about hate earlier, people just tended to jump and dislike that guy. Sometimes those waves just happen. There's nothing you can do about it. At the same time, Greg Jackson, Tarverdyan, this is a tough comparison to make based on success records and what they've shown so far. So I think that is the turning point where people are like, you were on a path. Are you still on that path? And Cain Velasquez, on the other hand, we're all expecting him to come back and be an even more imposing force. At the same time, Browne can absolutely knock out Cain Velasquez. There's no doubt about it, and that's why we got to see the fight.
Aren't the fighters responsible for charting their growth? Aren't they, when they are working with coaches, don't they understand, okay, I'm not learning things. I was learning things from this coach. I was progressing. I'm not moving ahead like I used to. We were talking to John McDessie, and he felt that his last place, he wasn't progressing. He wasn't gelling with the coaches, so he moved on. Shouldn't that be the responsibility of the athlete?
We all tell the story that we believe, and we all believe the story that we tell. And if you're saying, oh my God, I'm even better, oh, I've just opened up so many new things, I'm getting more attention from the coach, any of these stories you can convince yourself are true. The issue of fighting is you find out the truth in the fight, and that's not always a great thing. If you wake up looking at the lights and you were unprepared for Cain Velasquez, then you question it. Until then, you go with what you believe.
Thursday is a big night for Fight Network. Tune in at 9 p.m. for our live preview show leading into all of the UFC action on Thursday, July 7th. And keep it locked to FN for the main card and, of course, the main event, the UFC Lightweight Championship between Rafael Dos Anjos and Eddie Alvarez.